There is one thing that I feel is not impermanent, and that is the love. You cannot take love out of grief.
This is the Mindfulness and Grief Podcast, and I'm Heather Stang, author, yoga therapist, and thanatologist. You didn't choose grief, but here you're choosing how to show up for yourself, and I'll guide you along the way. In each episode, you'll experience practical tools and sound advice to help you tend to your loss, honor your love, and rebuild a life where grief, hope, and meaning can coexist.
Today, we are talking about step 3 in the mindfulness and grief system. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, my co-host, Amanda Palermo, is here.
Hi.
Hi. And we are walking you through the 8-step mindfulness and grief system. So tell me, Amanda, how do you feel about step 3, self-compassion?
I'm really excited to talk about this today. And I was taking some notes before yesterday, thinking about just how loaded this whole step is. And I think I mentioned this in grief group actually recently, that this is where the real work started for me personally with grief.
It's very important to me. And I actually realized I even misspoke because technically this step is compassion for all because we extend it to all beings. But a lot of times with grief, we are really focused on the self-compassion piece because we can be so hard on ourselves, even in this time where our heart is so tender and we're missing our person. We can beat ourselves up and the shoulds and the coulds and the wouldas. How, for you, just when you think about the list of things you were feeling when you came to this step, what did it do for you? What was the benefit?
The benefit was that it helped me resolve feelings of, I wouldn't say resolve, because I think it's still a work in progress. But I would say that it helped me to understand my feelings of guilt. There were things that I was feeling after my mom's death, after the numbness kind of wore off. And then I started to feel back into my body. And then all these feelings start coming up. And then I started processing just a lot of family history and thinking about my own childhood, and all this stuff started coming up. And there was just a lot of guilt. And so it helped me to realize that I'm human. I'm having a human experience. I think I mentioned this before. And that my mother also was a human being. So I think that sometimes I also had, as close as I was to her, I had some residual resentments about things from the past. And then I felt guilty about having those feelings.
And you don't get to control what feelings you have. And we often say how grief is the uncontrollable response to a loss. Like we don't decide how we're going to feel, but what we're learning to do here is learn how to respond to the feelings in a very different way than how a lot of us are conditioned. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And it's unexpected. Those feelings were really unexpected. When they came up, I thought, what is this? And then the other part of it was feelings with, I think at that point, things with other family members, because it's so interesting how grief, just like when there's a loss, within a family, how it just starts to then just affect everybody. And then those family relationships get sticky sometimes. And I started to feel hostile towards people. And I think that I started to have to work on that compassion towards other family members. It's okay. They don't understand what I'm going through. There was a lot of frustration with that. They don't understand what I'm going through. They don't understand what I'm feeling. So I would feel hostile or resentful towards them. And then again, feel guilty about that.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? And the reality is they're probably feeling very similar, where they're like, she doesn't understand how I'm feeling. I'm all alone in this. And we know human relationships are complicated anyway. And then you put it in this grief environment where everybody is extra irritable, exhausted. You're just a raw nerve walking around. And it is where we really do need to show up for ourselves, which is something we're not all taught to do, and where we need to set good boundaries, because compassion also has good boundaries and self-compassion has good boundaries as well. So I think it's important for us to define what compassion is and maybe what it isn't. And so the word compassion is really about being with suffering in a way that has an active component. So let's just start with the word empathy. Empathy feels what someone else is feeling, end of experience. That's it. It's just feeling with somebody, which doesn't necessarily lead to wise action if you stop right there. If anybody's ever felt that emotional contagion that is so easy to pick up on when someone else you care about is feeling irritable or hostile or upset, you can just get in that pool of despair and swim with them. Sympathy has more of a distance. It's, oh, they're hurting, but it's not necessarily my problem. Like, you recognize someone is having an experience. And of course, this is splitting hairs semantically. Some people might use the word sympathy as compassion, but I like words. And I think it's good to have these categories. So there's a little bit maybe of just, oh, that's not happening to me, but it's happening to them. Pity is a looking down on someone, like they are less than you. But compassion cares and responds. Compassion starts with empathy, where you feel with someone, and is followed by some sort of care. And this also applies to self-compassion. Self-compassion starts with empathy, a feeling, a stress response, a big emotion, and follows with some action that leads to care. So what does that even mean? Because we know we cannot fix this. We cannot go back and change the story. We can't go back in time and do all the things we feel like we could have done. And so what does that action look like? Amanda, I'm going to invite you, if you'd like, from your experience for you, what does compassion look like? Maybe give one example for self-compassion in your life and one example compassion in your life. And I'll do the same. So when you're feeling a big emotion within yourself, how do you respond?
I respond with what I said earlier. It's like a personal mantra. I say to myself, I'm a human and I'm having a human experience. I'm doing my best.
And other people?
For other people, I try and say the same thing. They're human. They're having a human experience. They're doing their best. And that's the only way for me personally that I can make sense of it. It's just the same mantra, but putting it towards myself and then putting it out towards someone else.
Because we're not that different from the other people, are we? And my practice is really similar when I'm feeling a strong sense of overwhelm, whether it's sadness or grief, regret or guilt, and I can catch it without going down a rabbit hole. A lot of times for me, it is like placing my hand over my heart and just recognizing I'm having maybe a trauma response. Maybe sometimes I'll just say, oh, I'm having a grief response. There's a seeing in that. And even though it might sound on the surface like it's a feeling with, it goes a step further by actually caring about it. And that hand over the heart, or that mantra, and mantra is just a word for a short phrase, something we can focus on, that can interrupt that stress cycle internally. Or it might look like going and making yourself a cup of tea, or realizing I need to exit the room, or I need to phone a friend. There's a lot of different things that care can look like for each individual. But the key part is we recognize that either there is a person or a part of ourselves that is suffering, and that there is a part of us that can care deeply and respond to that suffering.
Yes.
I actually have this image in my head of a little Heather that's suffering and a big Heather that's comforting. It's very visual for me. And I can see the compassionate Heather putting her arm around the suffering Heather.
Right.
That image for me can really soften self-criticism and blame and shame.
Let me ask you a question, because for me, with this, all of this is, like I said before, this is where like the real work for me personally, my own work on myself stems from this. When you say the action component tied to compassion, is that the self-care component that is tied in with compassion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But now I'm going to ask you a question. When you say self-care, what do you mean?
A variety of things. It could be something as taking a bath to letting myself off the hook about something. It could be yoga. It could be going outside. And it could also be, I'm thinking of what's coming to mind is that phrase that bereaved individuals may repeat to themselves, which is, I should be over this by now. I should be over this already. And thinking about a self-care action that would help that thought pattern. And when I say let myself off the hook, like allowing myself to say, it's okay. There's no timeline. You don't need to be.
I think sometimes when you're feeling that I should be, or why am I not over this, as if we get over this. And we've talked plenty about how that's not the point. But it is very common for us, that's the real us, me, and people I work with, to have a grief wave show up. And maybe it's early in grief and maybe it's 10 years down the road. And to be like, I should be able to handle this. And sometimes I think it can be helpful to remember the weight of loss. Someone you love dearly is not here, and that matters. It would be very odd for us to not care about that. And so perspective, and I don't mean perspective where we pour fuel onto the fire and make it bigger than it is in the moment, but just to honor the gravity of somebody you care about deeply isn't here. So this isn't like a paper cut that you put Neosporin and a Band-Aid on, and in 3 days that paper cut is gone. This is grief, and that wound gets opened again throughout time when different things arise. Now, the severity of that wound and the intensity and the duration shifts over time because you get more maybe attuned to your ongoing relationship with them, or you have more self-soothing skills, or you've had more experience of being able to live a normal life while still missing someone. And so to go back to your question, is that action self-care? And that word self-care is huge. Like you said, it could be going outside for a walk. It could be letting yourself cry. It doesn't even mean stifling the emotion. It could be writing a letter. There are unlimited possibilities for what that looks like. It's what do you need in the moment? Not what does someone else think you need, In fact, that's a big shift that many of us can experience through grief, especially if we've been caregiving or have been in some sort of pattern our whole life or with the person, and we suddenly have to decide, what do I need? That's can be really hard, but also really important. How do I celebrate a holiday? How do I decide where to go on vacation? How do I decide what to eat? Everything is impacted, and your relationship to yourself and your relationship to others is really what self-compassion is about.
Yes. And it makes me think of also from a different standpoint, from even, I was thinking, it just comes to mind because I'm a yoga teacher and I've been leading teacher trainings and things like that. And always trying to help teachers not exhaust themselves or burn out or things like that. And it's that learning of that compassion, not just for the students, but turning that compassion back to yourself. Because that kind of not prevents, but it helps for not get so much burnout or depletion or those types of feelings that teachers and clinicians can experience sometimes. So it's just, for me, it's so full of work on myself and my career. And it really opened up a lot for me working on this piece.
This was a huge journey for me too. I actually started really focusing on compassion as a personal practice when I realized how challenging my relationship with my father was. And not realized, that's silly because I've known my whole life how challenging it's been. But when I had the awareness that it wasn't necessarily healthy for things to continue the way they were. And so I picked up Dr. Kristin Neff's book, Self Compassion, which is really what this step is focused on, that and the Buddhist practice of metta, meditation. We'll talk about that more next. But in Dr. Neff's book and in her research, she has isolated 3 different elements of compassion that are really helpful for learning how to apply it when you're like, oh my gosh, I've been self-critical my whole life. What do you mean I need to be nice to myself? What does that even look like? And what does that even look like when I have all this new guilt and shame and blame that I'm feeling because of this loss? And so those 3 steps for me were super helpful. The first one is mindfulness, which is simply being aware of the difficult emotions you're carrying and your relationship to yourself, the negative self-talk that's showing up, and deciding to have some equanimity, which we talked a lot about last week, a calm and steady mind in the presence of difficulty. The second piece is common humanity. And I found this to be particularly helpful. I think it's really helpful with grief. Common humanity is understanding that all humans face challenging experiences. All humans go through grief. All humans feel like they didn't do enough or have hard days or yell at someone they didn't mean to yell at. It's just part of being human that we are not going to have it together all the time. So there's nothing wrong with you. And with grief, it is so human to grieve. Common humanity, again, I'm very visual. For common humanity, I'm laughing a little because I don't think I realized how visual I was. I actually see this globe in my head, and it has these cartoon characters of heathers all over the world. So there's like a little heather in Asia, there's a heather in Hawaii, there's a heather in Australia, and these heathers are all experiencing whatever the trouble is, whatever the suffering is. These are all heathers that are missing someone or didn't do something skillful. And I can just be like, okay, heathers, we're in this together. We're not alone. And they aren't really about me, but it's about other people who are experiencing maybe a challenging relationship with someone. So that's common humanity. Another way of thinking about it is we're all in the same boat. And then the final piece, this is the hardest for many of us. So it's a practice. And I think it's a little easier to work with common humanity and this. It's self-kindness is the third one. These aren't taught in any particular order by her. I teach them in the order that I think I learned them in. But the self-kindness is how we talk to ourselves, how we show up for ourselves. Do we take time to get some healthy food into our body, or do we just cram something down that's going to make ourselves feel worse? On a small end, on a big end, do we say, oh, you're such an idiot, you really got that wrong? Or do we say, oh, you are grieving a huge loss, of course that happened? And so the way I see common humanity and self-kindness coming in together is, how would I talk to one of those other Heathers? The Heather in Australia. You have to do a cartoon of this, draw this out. But how would I talk to, if I was a grieving mother, how would I talk to another grieving mother? Would I talk to her the same way? And then bringing that back to me.
The common humanity piece is so big because grief can just feel so isolating. I remember feeling, and still at times feel, very alone in it. And I think when you can connect with other people that understand the grief experience, let's say, it's powerfully healing in so many ways. So like the grief support group is obviously what I'm thinking of, but it's just sitting with people that aren't really judging you. They're listening and holding space for you, and they're going through similar feelings that you're experiencing. The losses are different, but it's the same sort of feelings and challenges. And it's the one place where actually I can say, oh, they do understand what I'm going through. This is a place where people get it. They really get it. And that can feel very validating. My grief, it's a place where my grief can be heard and witnessed.
And even if it isn't the same story, or even if you had one person had a difficult relationship, another person had a great relationship, there are going to be some overlaps and there are going to be some differences. And I actually don't think the differences are a problem, because that can take us into really stretching our compassion skills, where we can be like, oh, this person, maybe we aren't aligned 100% on everything, but we're actually more alike than we are different because we're missing someone.
And I was just saying this to somebody the other day, that when I listen to other people speak about their grief, it helps me to see different points of view. So, like you were saying, sometimes there's some differences, but there's so much good in that because you can see something in a way that maybe you would never have seen it before. And I think that's really wonderful, because it helps to open up your mind a little bit.
This is part of why I love groups. It's for both reasons. It's because in groups, you can know that you are around people who do understand. And sometimes somebody will say something that you're like, wow, I never thought about it like that. And I see how that shows up in my life, or doesn't. And it still deepens connection, because connection doesn't have to be between two identical people. That loneliness we feel, that deep, cold, icy loneliness we feel when we want that specific person back in our lives, can often be warmed up when we are in community. And with compassion, it doesn't have to be that you're alike. It doesn't have to be that you're homogenous, because it is the desire for suffering to be alleviated, no matter what
I think
the story.
this is the step where in the meditations, is there one where we make up our own? Is this the one where we make up our own meditation, or one of them? We like do a
You make up your own mantra.
Yes, it's Metta, right? Or is that,
There's one practice, and anybody listening can do this. It kind of helps to sit with yourself in quiet and think about mindfulness and common humanity and self-compassion, and you come up with your own self-compassion mantra. So what are you going to say to yourself the next time you catch yourself being self-critical? Is that the one you're thinking about?
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of.
I think that is the most pivotal practice in the program because it paves the way for you to be more gentle with yourself through the whole thing.
Yes. I'm thinking of when I feel self-critical and there's a feeling I'm struggling with that pertains to the loss of my mother, that's tied to that loss in some way. I think my self-compassion mantra was, this feeling isn't permanent. And there's something about, and of course this goes back to yoga a little bit, but this idea that this sense of impermanence, that these feelings change. And like I always say, grief is fluid. So it's always changing shape. It's always changing when it shows up. And so in this moment, I recognize what it is I'm feeling. And then I say to myself, this isn't permanent, this feeling, because tomorrow it will probably be a different feeling. A half hour later, it will be a different feeling. Because for me, I think sometimes if I'm in a feeling that feels very negative or dark or heavy, there's this in the back of my mind, this unrealistic thought that comes in that says, this is the way you're going to feel forever. This situation, it's going to be like this forever, which is not true.
But it sure feels like that at the time, doesn't it? I'm sure people who are listening are going, but I feel like this forever because we know that feeling. We know it so intimately. When you are in deep pain, it does feel like it's going to be here forever.
And it's not to say, I don't want to make it sound trivial, like this too shall pass. It's not that.
Thank goodness.
It's so cringe.
It's how you say it, right? And intention. And same with impermanence, because impermanence can be cringe. Any of these can be weaponized. Any of these beautiful words can be used in a dismissive way. And that's not the point of compassion. Back to the whole compassion, what compassion is not fixing, rescuing, or making pain disappear. It's not pretending everything's okay. It's not spiritual bypassing, which is that this too shall pass, when really deep inside you're like, oh my gosh, I'm crumbling. And it is not even a skill that we perfect, it's a way of being. And so I get what you're saying, because there can be that. I remember, this isn't a death loss, but I remember when I was going through a horrible breakup, I'd been cheated on with he cheated with my best friend. And I know this is a grief podcast, but loss. Yeah, this would probably be even more, make me more crazy if I'd had a death. And it was like, oh, you should just be grateful for the lessons you're getting from this. As I'm sitting there crying in the chiropractor's office, and it's a chiropractor. I never went back to that chiropractor. I was just like, wow, I felt so dismissed. And I know people who are grieving the death of someone get those kinds of things from people, whether it's someone who sees themselves as a healer or is really uncomfortable. Like, that is diminishing. Now, if I myself, Heather, am sitting there going, wow, I have learned a lot from this. Totally different.
Yeah, totally different.
So back to cringe. We can be cringy with ourselves and other people can be cringy with us.
Yeah. And I think that's how I deal with those difficult emotions. They're like clouds passing through me. It's like water against me. It's fluid. My feelings are fluid and they change from minute to minute, hour to hour. And so if I trust that for myself, then I know that tomorrow I'll feel something different. And that's just my way of my mantra, what helps me get through sticky feelings.
There is one thing that I feel is not impermanent, and that is the love. that is the through line. You cannot take love out of grief. It is in there. And so while that idea of impermanence can both be comforting at times and terrifying at times, because I don't want my person to be impermanent. I don't want their life to be impermanent. I don't want our connection to be impermanent. It is that through line of love and that continuing bond, that continued connection that can be the thing you lean in on when the idea of impermanence is scary. And I also think thinking about your person in many cases can be a gateway to self-compassion. Somebody said in group a few weeks ago, you might remember this. She'd seen I can't remember if we talked about this on here before or not, but she'd seen a meme somewhere on the internet, and whoever came up with this, we're giving you credit, even though we don't know who your name is. But it was like, the way I'm going to honor my mother is to take care of her daughter the way she would want me to.
Yes. The way that I can honor my mother is taking really good care of her daughter.
Yes. And that is a gateway to self-compassion. If you had a decent relationship with your mother, of course. If you didn't, it may or may not be, might not work for everybody. But I thought that was really powerful.
Oh, yes. When I heard that, it really spoke to me. Definitely. Because I always think that, oh, this would be something my mom would want me to do this.
Self-compassion is almost a precursor to continuing bonds, not required, but if you are more comfortable with yourself as a human, I imagine in many cases, it might be a little bit more readily available to feel that connection with your person because you're not cutting yourself off. You're fully yourself. You're fully open to yourself. That might be a little heady, but that's just something that came to mind.
And it makes me think of individuals that have a difficult relationship with the person that passed. Compassion in general would really be needed because I imagine that there would be so many conflicting feelings around the loss.
Working with a difficult relationship in grief does invite us to do more self-parenting, more reparenting of ourselves and really work on our relationship with ourselves. And compassion is a big gateway to that too. Not gateway, it is the thing. It is what we are doing. Because if your parent or your partner or whoever died was critical of you and you're embodying that, you have to unlearn that self-criticism.
That sounds really hard.
I have been working on it for probably about 10 years now, and I'm here to tell you it does work. It's a practice.
Yeah.
But it can be done. And self-compassion is the way through. Again, that's why I picked up that book. And then we can move into compassion because compassion for the person who died can also be hard if it was a difficult relationship. If you had an easy relationship, it might be very natural to bring up the image of your mother, for instance. Like when you talk about your mother, you light up. You two were so I wish I could be in the room with the two of you. I feel like we'd have such a great time. And it's easy probably for you to think about your mom during hard times in her life and have that compassion and that care and that desire that she didn't suffer, even if she did. But if it is somebody who is difficult, that's hard to access. Or if it's somebody who is in your family system or your grief circle who you feel is just not hearing you or not getting it, that can be hard to have compassion for, but it can be incredibly helpful to understand that compassion for another person or for yourself doesn't mean letting them off the hook for bad behavior, or condoning it or excusing it, but it's not carrying around that heavy weight for yourself. And one way that's really helped me to see this clearly comes out of the Buddhism practice of metta, which we'll now, I guess, talk about, is that idea that if everybody were free from suffering, we wouldn't have conflict. So it's wise to hope that our enemies or our difficult people could be happy and safe and free from suffering, because then we would all get along better.
That's what it makes me think of with dealing with difficult people. When there's an event like a death, and how that really shakes up families, or it can shake up a family. And sometimes you have to, deal with difficult people that are challenging in your life around that event. I'm just thinking of my own family and just having to deal with siblings and things like that. And sometimes it wasn't very easy. And so, then leaning on compassion for them and compassion towards myself, because I would feel bad if I wasn't handling it the way maybe I thought I should be handling it, or something like that. So the Metta meditations are really great for that.
And they weave in self-compassion naturally, because a metta meditation, and that's METTA is how you spell it. It's the meditation of compassion and loving kindness. Compassion being the desire, freedom from suffering, and loving kindness being the desire that we feel happiness and joy. It's all woven in there. And so the way it works is you send well wishes in your mind. You feel like you're pouring out this sense of compassion and loving kindness by visualizing a series of people and offering words of kindness. So, for instance, I might visualize Amanda as part of my practice. And I'm thinking, may you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy. May you know peace. Although I would add on, because this is where the self-compassion comes in, as I wish to. So it is, may you be free from suffering as I wish to be free from suffering. May you know peace as I wish to know peace. And the way we do it is we start with yourself is classically how it's done. You start by sending yourself those well wishes. And then you go out to a benefactor or a teacher or a mentor, someone that just feels like they charge your compassion battery, then a friend or family member, then a neutral person, and then a difficult person, and then all beings. And so woven in is this practice of wanting all people to be free from the suffering. All animals too, sentient beings can be in there. And it's really hard for a lot of us to start with you. May I be free from suffering. May I be happy. That can be hard when you first learn it. So sometimes we'll flip it where we put that benefactor first, which sometimes I use my dog, because my dog does not trigger me at all. And that's what metta is. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful practice. If you're listening and are interested, you can Google METTA. You could look for mine, Heather Stang, or you could find, there are many of them out there. Recently, with the Walk for Peace monks, Bhikkhu Panakara did a metta practice that I got to go to about a month ago now. And what was so interesting about that practice is, I don't know how much time actually passed, but I think we spent like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, just sending compassion to ourselves. Then he had us send it to all beings for about the same amount of time. So we didn't do all those little steps in between. We just did ourselves, and we did all beings for a long time for me. And it was powerful. And that's actually what I've been doing in my own morning practice. And so when I do the all beings, I'll go through those. I'll picture my friends. I'll picture a neutral person. I'll picture the difficult person of the day. I'll picture everybody and spend it there. But that's been really powerful to weave that into my daily practice.
I'm thinking of Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may our thoughts and actions contribute to that happiness. And I used to end all of my yoga classes saying that because it's so needed. I felt that at the end of class, there was always a silence, and everybody at the end of a yoga class, the mind is a little stiller, the body's a little tired, a little fatigued. And I would always think when I was saying that I was putting out something to the world as a reminder that we all are putting out the intention. It's an intention. And I just always found the translation of it so powerful. May our thoughts and actions contribute to that happiness.
It really takes the spotlight off of us as individuals and puts us into community, which community is where healing often happens. And if you're grieving and feeling that isolation and missing your person, we know from the studies, from the research, that social support is the great differentiator between how your grief experience is going to play out. Now, for people who are listening, who are thinking words like happy and joy are really not palatable right now, it's okay. You can make up your own words for metta if you like. You don't have to use classic words. So I found for some people when they're grieving, if I use the phrases I used to use, which is may you be happy, may you be safe, may you be free from suffering, I would change happy to healthy, or just may peace. It's finding the words that are not going to make you feel like your feelings are disenfranchised. I think that's really important. You can add in things like happy or may I know joy if it ever feels right. Because remember, the intention behind any of these practices, all of the practices we talk about in steps 1 through 8, and here especially, are that their intention is to alleviate suffering. And so if the practice itself is causing suffering, we might as well not do it.
It's counterintuitive.
Don't bother. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means it wants modifying. Just like in a yoga practice or an exercise practice, let's just use the gym. If you went to the gym and you're like, oh, I need to build muscle, I'm going to pick up this weight, and this weight is causing your tendons to tear or something. What is the point? Same with the yoga pose.
In yoga classes, I think that's a really important thing to say. If it's making you should feel better to some degree. You may listen, it's not going to get rid of all of your negative feelings overnight and things like that, but it should help you feel like you have tools and resources at least. And you should feel a sense of empowerment and contentment. So, yeah, if you're going to a yoga class and you leave and you're just feeling like worse than when you went in, it may not be the class for you.
And if you're doing compassion practice and you feel more self-critical, then you want to maybe back it up a little. And I find for a lot of people, a good way to start dipping your toe in the water, the lake of self-compassion, is to start with common humanity, because for many of us, looking across a circle at another grieving person or thinking about someone in our life that's going through a hard time is an easier entry point to feel that compassion for them, to build that up and then turn it back to you, than to just say, I deserve to be happy or I deserve to be free from suffering. But inside you're thinking, no, the feeling is more important than the words, always. Which is true for affirmations as well. And so that compassion mantra that we do, that we talked about earlier, you need to believe it. It's not a fake it till you make it, or if I repeat this enough times. Anybody who's tried that knows that for the majority of people, it's the feeling, not the words themselves, that matter. So you can start off rather than just saying, May I be at ease with what's happening, and you don't believe that. It might just be as simple as saying, I'm having a hard time. That is compassion.
Because you're also it's seeing the truth of what's really happening. It's mindful.
Yes. And it's not faking it.
Boy, I've said that a lot to myself. I'm having an off day today. I'm not doing right now, or something like that. I think that that's so great to say, that kind of being honest with yourself.
I'm thinking about a term that's come up in group, and I think one of our Awaken group members directed me to a magazine called, I think it's called Griefy. And this term, right? This term has come up where people be like, I'm feeling griefy.
Yes.
And there's something about that's gentle.
I love it.
I do too. It is such a good description that has a little, I don't know if it's that Y on the end that just makes it a little softer. I'm feeling grief. I'm feeling griefy. That has been, I think, we're talking about somebody might say something and you're like, oh yeah, that's been one of those aha words. How are you feeling? Feeling griefy, which encompasses so many things.
But sometimes you just don't know what you're feeling. You can't always put it into words. Sometimes there are no words, but all you know is that you're just feeling griefy. And I used that term yesterday. I said to my husband, I'm just feeling griefy. Just griefy. I think it's awesome. It's a great word.
And look at us. What's so strange about grief is sometimes you do laugh. Like you're laughing at the common humanity of it all. The fact that you and I can connect over a kind of a silly word, even though we're talking about something sad and we're both thinking about our people, because even though we might be grief professionals, it does not mean we are immune to our feelings. But there's just something connecting and special and precious when you kind of have that shared language and that shared experience.
Yeah.
And like in that moment of showing up for someone else and you showing up for me, it does loosen the self-criticism and the fear and the shame and the regrets, because it brings you present, I think.
Yes.
So we've talked about self-compassion and we've talked about compassion. And our next conversation will be about step 4. Are we going to say this is our favorite? Because we say it for all of them. Next step is pretty pivotal as well, because it is all about being with the difficult emotions that arise. So it is an extension of self-compassion. As I've probably said before, it's not like each of these are little buckets. They all mix together. So we're going to talk about vulnerability and courage and how they show up in grief. How do you feel about step 4?
Oh, it's a big one. There's a lot. I'm thinking of a bunch of things. We get into it next week, but I think it's a very pivotal time for people when they're working on this.
It's about learning how to sit with those big, difficult emotions with equanimity so that you know you're not going to come undone. And it's about discerning when you want to turn towards taking care of yourself and going in and being more vulnerable, and when you want to turn to being more outward and expressive and more courageous, and understanding that just like you cannot separate grief from love, you cannot separate courage and vulnerability.
And it does take a lot of courage to sit with difficult emotions, to face them head on. It's just so scary sometimes. And that's what courage is. Fate moving towards something that is really scary and moving with it in a way, with working with the fear of it. Yeah. I can't wait to talk about it.
We need self-compassion first so that we aren't beating ourselves up during this time when we're being with things that are difficult. So they're really tied together. And I do hope you will come back and listen to Amanda and I share about the next step. In the meantime, Amanda, if people want to find you, where will they go?
You can find me on Instagram at Amanda Palermo 108.
Wonderful. And that will be in the show notes. And I do want to mention, I offer a monthly free Living with Grief workshop that I don't think I normally mention. And you can go to heatherstang.com and sign up for that. We do a little meditation, a little journaling, and you can ask me whatever questions you have about grief or mindfulness. But for now, take care of yourselves.
This brings us to the end of today's episode of the Mindfulness and Grief Podcast. If you found it helpful, please follow the show and consider leaving a review. It helps others find their way here when they need support the most. Then head on over to heatherstang.com, where you can join my Awaken Grief support community free for 14 days. You'll meet with me and other kind-hearted members several times a week. Get access to the Mindfulness and Grief course, plus guided meditations, journaling prompts, and more to help you navigate grief. If you are a grief professional or volunteer, you can also learn about my Mindfulness and Grief Coach certification. I'll teach you how to share the mindfulness and grief system with others, and just as importantly, how to walk the talk and care for yourself along the way. I'm so glad you chose to show up for yourself today. May these teachings benefit you and those you love. Be gentle with your heart and come back soon.